And we're live. Welcome back to another Corona Geek here, where we talk all about mobile app development using Corona SDK. I'm your host, Charles McKeever, and today we're talking about grid patterns. We're going to continue our conversation that we were having about creating a memory matching game, and we're also going to talk about some contractor tips. So if you're thinking about becoming an app developer, maybe contracting out your skills to someone else, we'll have some tips for you so that you can make the best out of that endeavor. Joining me on the panel today is Dr. Brian Burton down in Abilene.
Hello. Brian
is the author of several Corona books, so if you're looking to get started in Corona and you need some help there, go check out burtonsmediagroup.com. He's got lots of great resources for you. Also joining us is Ed Marina of roaminggamer.com.
Okay.
If you're looking for templates, you're looking for code, you're looking for somebody to come save your dog, go to roaminggamer.com. There's lots of great stuff there. Also joining us is Sergey Lurg. Hey, Sergey. So
hey.
If you haven't been on the show in a while or hadn't seen Sergey before, he's got lots of great stuff over at spiralcodestudio.com. Check him out. And then we've got a guest on the hey, thanks for joining us. And then also over here on my left is Periscope. So, you know, lots of great things going on in Periscope. I don't know if you guys are paying attention to this, but this is a great way to market your app. So if you want to get out there and attract a whole new audience of people, Periscope is blowing up. People are kind of all over the place and doing all kind of stuff. I've seen drones with iPhones. I actually watched a guy drop an iPhone from like a 7th-story building the other day. They made some kind of home parachute, and they dropped their iPhone and live streamed the whole thing. So anyway, we're experimenting with that a little bit, and it's fun. So if you're on Periscope, come over to Google+. We're hanging out live on Corona Geek, and you can find us, of course, on twitter.com/CoronaGeek or facebook.com/CoronaGeek, and the links to the Hangouts are there as well. So I'm going to leave it up live, just let it broadcast over there, and then we're here as well. So thanks everybody for being here. Let's talk about what we talked about last week.
All right. Well, thanks for being here too, Charles. You sound a little bit off today. We already talked about that, but you're putting in the extra effort today, so.
Yeah, Sergey says your voice sounds different. Is your microphone plugged in correctly? And I was like, no, that's just me. That's how I sound today. I feel a little bit. I don't know how it comes out on that end, but I feel a little bit about like a radio DJ. I've kind of got like a gravelly, bass at the end. So
time to do all your voiceover work.
Yeah. I'm somewhere between radio DJ and one of the Golden Girls. So if you're old enough to remember that show, you know what I'm talking about. All right. Well, let's talk about what we had last week. We kicked off our memory matching game. We had previously had a series on where we developed an endless runner game. We finished that up, and then last Hangout we started a brand new memory matching game series. So we're going to go through the whole process of developing a game, and we're publishing that on each of our Hangouts. So you can download. There's a link in the last week's show notes. There's a link to the code, and you can download the code and follow along with us. So we're going to be adding a piece each week to it, and so we're also breaking the Hangouts out into clips now, so you can listen to them in 5-10 minute segments. So there's really no excuse not to go and take advantage of all of that that's there for you. We did have a few questions from the Endless Runner series, which we want to get to in just a second. So stay tuned for that. But we will be talking, more about consulting tips and things like that in a few minutes as well. So if you have any show topics that you want us to cover, check the show notes for this Hangout, and there's a link there that goes to the forum. You can leave your suggestions there. And actually, the consulting tip topic was one that was left for us. Somebody recommended that topic, and so now we're going to talk about that today. The other thing that you need to know about is that we are playing Bounce. So every month we are playing a Corona Geek game, and we're having a challenge where you play for high score, and then you post over at facebook.com/CoronaGeek. You post a screenshot of your high score, and I say screenshot. It can be a picture if you have a hard time picking a screenshot on Android or something like that, or you're on a weird device. Just take a photo, go over to facebook.com/CoronaGeek, upload that image, And that's all you need to do to participate in the challenge. So the end of the month, we will pick a winner, a high score winner, and that person will get a $50 gift card. So this month we're playing Bounce by Ketchup. There's a version available on iOS and Android, and you can find links to those in the show notes. So all you have to do is download those and play, and hopefully, good luck. Hopefully you'll win something. Does anybody on the panel have anything that they want to share? Any kind of community announcements or anything going on? Brian, I know you were working on some updates to your book and stuff like that. Do you have anything going on there? Everybody's on.
I've got a few things. I've got a few things going on there. There will be an update to all of the Corona books that I've put out sometime later this spring, early summer, for some of the minor changes that have occurred to the Corona SDK. And I am working on some shorter, more advanced books that will handle some of the more advanced topics, such as in-app purchases and cloud computing, just some of the more advanced type of topics.
Okay. Yeah, and for anyone who doesn't know, Brian didn't mention it, but I'll say it out loud, is that he continually updates these books. So if you purchase one of his books, he'll send you an email and say, hey, there's an update to the book, and you can download it usually for free. He's really good like that. And if you buy any of his books that are like an advanced copy or anything like that, you usually get the book ahead of time, and then he continually updates it as he goes along. So we're trying to figure out how to turn that into a more of an ongoing revenue stream for him. But right now, as far as the end user is concerned, as far as you, the consumer, is concerned, as soon as you buy the book, you have kind of a comfort of knowing that it's going to be updated and it's not going to be out of date, which is really good.
Right. And the first book I wrote was back in 2011 when the early release became available, and I'm still updating it. So everybody got it at a discount, and there's been new chapters added to it, new material. It's been very successweul.
Good.
From
Excellent.
my perspective, at least. And I've heard really good things from other people that really like the book. So.
Well, we've talked about this before, and the fact that you self-publish means that you can measure success by your own standard and not have to necessarily give all your profits away to somebody else. So that's fantastic.
Yeah. It has been interesting, and we've had quite a few big publishers come through the campus lately, and they've all been, well, would you consider going with us? And it's, they don't do the free updates. They don't. You lose control of the product, and it has to become their product instead of mine. So I feel like I'm halfway in touch with the Corona community, and I'm really happy to be able to offer this service to them. And the books are being picked up by colleges and high schools all over the world. So that's pretty exciting.
Having your own intellectual property is huge. I mean, it's just something that you can continue to market and sell, and it just never goes away. So. That's kind of why. That's kind of why that whole app development thing is such a big deal. I mean, being able to create your own intellectual property and put it out there, and it's yours. Yeah, it's yours. I mean, the success and the failures and everything else are yours, but it's yours at the end of the day. So it's great. Anybody else got anything they want to throw in? No? Once? Twice? No? Okay. Well, we do have a couple of questions here. We want to cover those real quickly. This came from sysads. That's his user handle in the forums. Basically, the question is related to our Endless Runner game series. Now, the disclaimer that we want to put out here is that we don't want to write anybody's game for them. So the templates that we are providing, the code walkthroughs that we're doing are kind of, are for instructional, informational type things. You can take those templates at the end, and you can modify them and extend them and publish them as a game if you want. Okay. That being said, feature requests per se aren't necessarily something that we're going to do. However, these are some good questions. We do like community questions, so we thought we'd bring them here and at least have a discussion around them and point sysads in the right direction. So if you have a question for us, you can always leave a question either in the forums or the blog post or wherever you find us, and we'll try to at least point you in the right direction. So here, here's the first question. Sysads asks. He says, "Hi, you guys are amazing. Thanks for all the toots. The toots are so far loving it. With regards to Zigzag, if I'm to add a pickup at certain intervals just to lower speed of the player for a defined time frame. Where can I do that? So Ed is the mastermind behind this, so I'm going to defer that question to Ed. And if anybody has anything they want to throw in, please go ahead.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Can you hear me now? Okay. So yes, that was I was ready for that. The other question first, but I'll take this one. So the question is if we wanted to add pickups, basically, in a nutshell, if we want to add pickups to the game, how and where would we do it? You're going to pick up being some kind of object in the game that you would run into, pick up, hit to do something, and in this case, slow the character down for a little while. The advice I'm going to give is to take a look in game.lua down at about line 132. What you're looking for is the enter frame function. And if you followed along in the series, you'll remember that what happens here is that every frame, two functions are called in the wall module. The first function we call is remove segments if needed, and the second one is draw segment if needed. This is the one that we're interested in. Basically what this is doing is every frame it checks to see, do I need to draw more parts of the hallway, the wall, the background, etc. This is the same kind of logic you want to apply to saying, is it appropriate at this time to draw a pickup object? So what you want to do is simply, I would suggest this, is make a copy of wall.lua, the wall module, gut it, take out all the stuff that draws the hallways, etc., and just leave the decision code in there. And then the simplest way is to first have it create a pickup at every position where it would have put a new hallway segment. So take all of this left wall, right wall content out and replace it with something as simple as display.newCircle. And then place it right in the center of the hallway. Don't do the offset or any of that. Then once you get that work, oh, and of course what you'll want to do is replace the draw segment if needed code with the code to do the drawing of the pickup, and then make sure in game Lua to simply add your new, let's say you called it pickup M, draw, let's see, what this will do, if coded correctly, is draw a circle at every juncture that every turn, basically. So if you followed my instructions just now, you draw a circle here, there'd be a circle here, and so on and so forth. And once you get that working, then you can start to think about how often do I draw a circle, adding a physics body to it so I can collide with it. How do I make sure that when the player collides with it, it does something interesting? And also, how do I position it other than at the turn? Because at the turn, interesting. Down the middle of the hallway, more interesting, because then you have a decision to make. I mean, this is a short segment, but you can imagine, at least I do, that adding a pickup in the hallway where the user has to jog to the right or jog to the left temporarily to pick it up is much more of a challenge than simply aligning correctly at the juncture. So that's my medium short answer to that question.
Okay, seems like you could get really fancy with that. You could say, you can make the screen flash whenever they do the pickup, which would add an obstruction to the screen, right? I mean, so you do
a number of interesting things with this.
You'd want to pick the pickups up, but then at the same time, you might not want to because you're like, oh.
Yeah, I like that idea because you're giving them a boost, but you're also making it sort of like, that's a little bit too dangerous because I lost track of where I was.
Yeah, making it harder. Yeah, definitely. And then, you might, like you said, you might want to only show them a pickup on long stretches of hallway, whereas the short one might be too distracting. So, okay. So it says also, how do I change the buttons to PNG files? The push button class .lua is all drawing buttons. So this was I ran into this when I was using one of your templates because I know you have a push button class, but I wanted an image there. So I had that same question.
Okay, so it's interesting you should mention that. So first of all, it's important to realize that in this series, although SSK has been included, I'm not using the SSK button library. So for people who are new, or basically, how do you draw a button? There are different ways to draw a button in Corona. One, you can roll your own system. Do it all on your own. That's the one I suggest for people to start off with, because you'll learn a lot about drawing buttons and touches and things like that. However, another way to do it is to use the widget class. Perfectly valid. It's or the widget library. I don't personally use it because I want to control a little bit more about what's going on in the system, and I like to own the code in a sense. Another way to do it: use the button system supplied with this code, which was simply extracted, I'm sorry, from our OOP discussion about 2 or 3 months ago. I lost track of what number I'm on, but another way to make buttons, and I'm not going to talk about it today, but I will talk about it in the future, which is to use the SSK button system. So in short, the SSK library has a button system for push buttons, toggle buttons, radio buttons, sliders. It's also got a callback generator, so you can hook these things up to saving data in tables, persisting the information directly to your storage. The button library that I produced is designed to make your life as simple as possible and to give you a lot of flexibility with regards to what the buttons look like and how they behave. But for this game, I did not want to get distracted by the details, because there are quite a few details depending on how far you want to take the visual aesthetics of your buttons and behaviors and etc. Instead, I used, as I said, the OOP example, and these buttons right here, which we're looking at, came out of 2 files. And specifically, we're using the code from, if you're looking at the framed copy of this game, app framed scripts, and then you want to look at pushbuttonclass.lua. And this pushbutton class, in a nutshell, what it does is it produces 2 rectangles, one on top of the other, and basically just swaps them out. One is visible, one is not. But when you click on it, it swaps the visibility. So you can specify one rectangle is yellow, the other one is blue. And then when I clicked on it, perhaps if I made the blue one the selected color, that's what it would show. I didn't click on it, it would be yellow. In this case, it's yellow and slightly less transparent yellow, or translucent. So let's look at the code. I'll point you in the right direction. So using the code that comes with the game, we're looking at pushbutton class Lua, and at the very top, you'll see this table definition. And in here we have X, Y, width, and then we get to these interesting parameters called cell fill and uncell fill. And what this is short for is selected fill, unselected fill. Down below, use these to set the fill color for rectangles. So as I said before, these buttons are basically simple rectangles with a fill color and an optional stroke color. So the question was, if people can even remember at this point, is how do I make PNGs? How do I make images instead of rectangles? Here's what I would suggest you do. First, consider adding, you wouldn't do it in the default, but you could put here something like cell image, just to remind yourself what the parameter name is, and uncell image. And notice that I use it just short, IMG, but I could have spelled it out.
For select and unselect, right?
And so what this will be, these are just reminders for me that if supplied, what I'm saying here is I want the user to use, I want the code to use the image file and not use a fill color. So then let's find the cell example, and I'll show you how to do this. So what you would do, you'd say if, let's see, if self cell image and else and, before I put any code in here, what this is doing is saying if cell image was supplied as an argument to the parameters. No, that's not correct. It's been a while since I looked at this. Okay, so at some point previous to this, any parameters that were passed in are copied right into the object. So if you specify a cell image, a path to a PNG file to this branch here. So I'm just going to paste the original code in. But instead of doing a new rect, I'll do a new image rect. And then I will take this bit right here and where the texture would go. So if you remember, the signature for this function is display group, X position, Y position. No, that's not right, is it? This is why I should, just a moment, let me bring up the docs.
Well, and that's okay. I mean, you don't have to. Again, you don't have to write the code.
I don't want to write the code, but I want to lead them in the right direction.
Right.
Or he or she, I'm not sure.
But it seems like the overview is that you're going to modify that so that it accepts a parameter and then creates an image as opposed to a rectangle.
Right. So I'm using new image rect. It takes a group and a file name, and then it takes a width and a height. So where I was with that was, you've specified a path. So I'll take this part here. I won't draw a rectangle. Instead, I'll do a new image rect. I will substitute in the path to that image and set the width, and then we would do self.x equals, that's already specified, so we didn't need to do it. And that would be it, pretty much. So here we draw a rectangle if nothing is specified. Otherwise, we draw the image. And you would do a similar piece of code down here for the uncell, and you should be in good shape. So later when you call it, you just pass in an image path.
And doing that way maintains it maintains the way that you're accomplishing this, as opposed to sort of maybe hard coding it in place. Is that correct? You're keeping it modular as opposed to just
right. This OOP code was designed to demonstrate how to take a base class and abstract a new version of the class from it. But in this case, you wouldn't necessarily want to abstract a new instance of the class that took images. It makes more sense to have an option in this case. So it becomes more, as you say, modular. You can choose to do a simple rectangle, or you can do an image.
So you're kind of just extending the class with additional functionality.
Right. It makes more sense in this case to put that functionality directly in the base class.
Now, hopefully that makes sense to sysads. If that doesn't make sense, then definitely go back and look at the Hangout that we did on object-oriented programming. That might help shed some light on how the button class is structured, and look at what Ed just showed you, and hopefully that'll help you put together the solution that you're looking for. So the other question here was was geared, and Ed, thank you for that. The other question here was geared towards just being a new Corona developer. So he says, they say I'm a new programmer. I'm new to programming, and Corona certainly is my preferred engine so far. I just started following the tutorials, and it's the best I've ever seen. Well done, guys. Thank you for that. More accolades for the group here. My challenge as a beginner is what videos or materials to read to help with just the basic simple physics games like the maze game. As I don't know if you have any topics or plan to. So, you guys got any thoughts around that? I have a few suggestions, but
actually, I responded to that. I wasn't sure what sysads meant by the maze game, unless we're referring to Zigzag.
I would think that would be Zigzag, yeah, like, that sort of thing. And I know. Well, did you have a follow up to that? What did you say in the?
I'll answer briefly the two questions that I recall in there. One, where do I go to get information? Yeah. Certainly continue to watch Corona Geek, and you should definitely, anybody who's on the show, you should visit their site, Sergey, myself, etc. Brian and Barry, do you have any blog posts or anything about Corona? Oh, Barry, we lost Barry. Oh, he's got a slow connection.
Well, it's a good suggestion. Basically, what I would say is go check out burtonsmediagroup.com. Okay, because there's lots of books there, lots of resources, and Brian,
tutorials.
And tutorials. And Brian's resources, the way that he writes his books, they're all project-based, so you don't just get like one little snippet. You get things that build on each other. Whereas you can go to the docs, docs.coronalabs.com, and you can get the documentation on how one aspect of the SDK works, and it might have an example there and things like that. But it's a snippet all by itself, and it's not really part of a project. So Brian's resources help in that respect. University.coronalabs.com/university. I've said it a million times. I don't know why I can't remember it. If you go there are a lot of intro videos that will walk you through the different concepts and things like that. And the physics engine is part of that series. And then there are sample apps. And a lot of people don't realize this, but there are sample apps that are in the download for Corona SDK. So there's one of the things that you can do is you can pop those open and you can just build those apps either in the simulator or put them on your device or whatever, and you can see how things run. We've done some videos where we do that for you so you can watch it without having to go through the build process. But really, I would say if you're new to Corona, go through all of the examples. But there's definitely a physics, a Hello Physics, and some other physics examples that are in that catalog as well. So do those things, and then also just if you just go to Google and Google for things, you're going to find Ed's site. You're going to find RomanGamer.com. You're going to find SpiralCodeStudio.com. You're going to find BurtonsMediaGroup.com. You're going to find all these resources out there because there's lots of great people in the community who have written tutorials and stuff, shared their knowledge. So
don't forget to go to GitHub too.
Oh yeah, GitHub's a good place. There is actually a lot, and the other thing is my brain is gone. What's that big code place where you can go and search for things where people answer questions?
Oh, now you're doing it to me. I forgot.
Stack Overflow.
Stack Overflow. Yeah, that thing. There's actually a
brain today.
I know it. There's actually a big category there for Corona SDK and stuff like that, so you can go search Stack Overflow and get help there. People are great about responding there, and I know that Rob, who is in the forums as well, he monitors Stack Overflow and looks for people asking questions outside of the Corona website. So go check that there. So, all right. Well, there you go. I think that's a lot of good resources. Let's get into the we are 30 minutes into the show, and we haven't even got to this app development consulting conversation. I know we want to have that. So, what do you guys want to do? You want to have the app consulting thing, or you want to do the memory matching game thing? Which one? Ed's shaking his head.
App consulting.
Well, going with Ed's shake of the head, let's talk about consulting.
Okay, let's do the consulting because I think even if we push memory matching till next time. We'll have a good solid show. So, app consulting. There are reasons why you might want to do it. You might want to take on projects on the side, whether you have a day job or not. And everybody on the panel here has, at one time or another, provided consulting services, either actively or in the past. So we wanted to bring this question to people, to the group, and find out what kind of tips we could share. So. Ed graciously brain dumped his thoughts, and we're going to kind of go off that list of questions. But if anybody has anything else that they want to throw in as we go along, feel free to build on the theme here. So we'll throw out the question, and anyone can kind of throw in. I'm sure since Ed wrote the questions, he'll have thoughts initially. But yeah. Let's just have a roundtable discussion. So I'll read off this first question here. It's more of a general question. It says, how did you decide it was worthwhile to do contracting, and why did you do it? So Ed, what are your thoughts there?
No, that was one of the ones where I was hoping somebody else would go first. But
it was
thoughts first on this one.
Yeah, go ahead, Sergey.
It was easy for me because my day job wasn't as exciting as I would hope. So contracting was for me a very reasonable choice.
Yeah, it seems like Go ahead.
I'll hold that question. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I'll jump in. You know, the reason why you might want to take a consulting project, you know, often financial plays a key role in that. But sometimes somebody comes along with a project that is just so exciting and interesting that to pass on it, you would feel like you're going to kick yourself the next day when you see it out there and you weren't able to be part of that app development. I'm very, very selective on which apps I'll work on, and I pass on many that I would love to work on just because of time constraints. But it's when I do take one on, it's usually because the project excites me more than necessarily financial rewards on it.
And I'd like to throw in on an extra bit on that is that if you do have a day job, sometimes taking on a side project to gain new skills can actually advance you in your main position.
Yes.
Ed?
Okay, so I heard interesting responses there. One thing that struck me when you guys responded was to talk about day jobs. First of all, I'd like to say that people who are thinking about quitting the day job to do contracting, not to disagree with Sergey because I didn't get to ask the question I was going to, but if you've got a solid day job that you've been doing for a while, you're making good money, you've got a past somewhere, it's not like a sketchy, maybe not going to be there tomorrow job. I'm talking about a job that you are mediocrely happy with, capable of doing and getting paid well to do. Don't give that up. In other words, Jeff Tennell, a long time ago, told me, he said, don't quit the day job. That was his 5-second advice, right? Don't quit your day job. However,
I can add, don't quit day job for now.
Yeah. Definitely don't. It's because it's very risky. It can be risky. I mean, it's hard to make money in contracting because there is competition. We're out there. We're out here doing it, so you're competing with us right off the bat. But I mean, it's hard, as you'll hear in the rest of this discussion.
Yeah. But I do agree with Sergey. Well, you know, once you reach a point where you where it flips, you know, where your contracting work takes so much time that you can't manage both, then you have to make a decision. But there's certainly nothing wrong with someone having a side project. I think that it's beneficial in a lot of ways, like Brian was saying, and not only just financially, but just enriching your skills and like Sergey was talking about being something that maybe provides you with some personal enjoyment.
Well, and I want to point out, Charles, you've said this many, many times, and I'm not sure who you're quoting, but you need to also look at your day job. That is a contract.
Yeah. Brian Tracy does a lot of business development type materials. He's been around for a long time, and he says that you're the president of your own personal services corporation, whether you have a day job or not. And it just so happens that the W-2 position that you go to every day it just happens to be your biggest client at the moment. They are but they are a client because at any point in consulting, a client can cut you loose. They ran out of money. They don't no longer want to continue the project. Whatever.
By a bus.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, so some clients just disappear. They just don't respond anymore.
That was one of the questions.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go to question number 2. What do you consider a short versus a long contract?
Okay.
Short is anything below 1 month's duration.
Yeah.
If it's longer 1 month, it's long term.
Yes, I would agree with that.
I also agree. Actually, I have a slightly different answer. 1 month, but also number of hours.
Yeah.
So if I'm going to be working on it for more than a month, regardless of the hours, it's long. But if I work more than 80 hours in a month, it becomes long.
Yes.
That's half time. That may seem funny to some people, but half time is more than half time. It always adds up to more.
Right.
Well, Greg Pugh, who's from gpanimations.com, who's not with us today, he was sending his answers, and he says, I'd say a short contract is one project, and a long contract is a series of projects. So he's kind of not necessarily breaking it down into the number of hours, but the number of the units themselves. And But I would have to agree with Ed in that if it's if it takes you 6 months to do, it doesn't matter to me that it's one project. That's a long project, 6 months, because that's 6 months that I have to think about it, and then I can't, not necessarily I can't have more than one project at a time, but that's it's taking up your time.
Right.
So.
I differentiate projects durations because a longer project tends to have factors that will affect your happiness, your risk, a lot of other things. Short projects are generally safer, and but there's definite benefits to long projects.
So that leads into the next question: is do you prefer short or long contracts, and why? And it sounds like you prefer maybe shorter ones.
I generally prefer shorter ones.
Shorter ones are funnier. You don't get bored of the project fast, so it's just you make it, you're done, and you're happy with the result. But long-term projects might be something very exciting but you have to work very long for it. And I disagree that short projects are safer. If we are talking about the payment and getting the constant payment, long-term projects are safer because you get a constant payment. Like for me, I have a constant rate, and how many hours I work, that many hours I get paid for. And if I have a constant project to work on, I have constant payment.
That's a good point. Yeah, I do like projects that I can turn over fairly quickly. Because of what Sergey's saying, financially it just makes sense, and I also do get bored on a project. So if a project is a long project and it has multiple pieces to it, and those pieces move along fairly quickly, the client is responsive, we can get things in place, the plan is kind of unfolding at a good clip, I can stay engaged and interested, and the project is pleasant. If it's something like I've got a project right now with a client, it's not even a project. It's just a sort of a side little to do. We've been going around and around on a design for like 6 months. The design, and I'm like, I got to the point where I'm like, I don't even want to talk about this anymore. I don't even want to do this anymore. It's become very monotonous, and it still pays, but as an individual, I'm bored. I'm done. I'm let's move on.
Yeah, I've worked on projects where the design took longer than the project was supposed to.
Yeah. And which is we're going to get into money here in a little bit, and we need to talk about what do you do when a project goes long and longer than you expected. So we'll get to that in a minute.
I'd like to add something to that.
Yeah, go ahead.
So first of all, I agree with Sergey. When I said safer, I didn't mean about money. Longer projects are safer in the sense that you may not be out of a job for a while. But what I was leading to there is that longer contracts, one of the things that I find, and we'll discuss this as we get further down, is that in my experience, the longer the contract goes on, the more the client will start to depend upon you for more than just development work. I think it's just a natural progression. Shorter projects are easier to define, so the client has had a chance to sort of like say, this is everything I want, here it is, go do it. But longer projects typically go, I kind of know what I want. As things go along, you may get drawn more into the design sort of responsibility and less developer. And so that's where the danger was that I was trying to mention there.
What do you guys think about breaking a big project down into a series of smaller projects? You ever done that before?
I'm not sure that's possible. You can have different roles in your project, like one doing graphics, one doing like level design, and one doing something different like user interface, but breaking it into small projects, no. You can break it into milestones, but that's it.
Well, okay. Let's talk about it in terms of just to build on the idea. Let's say that you do the design, and that's just a project, right? And the design is something that you could hand to somebody and say, okay, here's the design. Now go hire a programmer to implement it. You ever thought about doing that, breaking it up in that way? It doesn't sound like anybody does.
No.
No. I always try to break things up into chunks.
Usually your client's going to come with a concept, and if you're really lucky, the client's used a tool like Blueprint or one of these that gives you design concepts. But you as the programmer, the design is fluid. There's going to be constant changes to it. I had an app once that was using all text fields and text boxes, and I explained to them that error checking is so much easier with a picker. So we used a picker wheel in place of those text fields. So it's all fluid.
Familiar.
Yeah, it does.
I do like to break things down, and maybe as Sergey says, maybe they should be treated as milestones. But I like to talk about them as individual units. That way we can sprint from start to finish on the design, and we can sprint from start to finish on.
For example, you start a project with placeholder graphics, and you design the gameplay first. Then when you have the gameplay, you design user interface, the menus and other stuff. And when it's done, for example, my current project, long-term project, we have done the design, we have done the gameplay, but now we are making multiplayer stuff. So this is like another big step that needs to be completed.
Cool. All right, well, let's talk about working with clients in particular. So one of the questions here is, do you vet clients? If so, how? So vet meaning, do you screen them? Do you kind of interview them? Does anybody have any thoughts on that?
As much as possible.
As much as possible.
Yeah, we all, I think, and this is probably true for everybody on the panel here, we get a lot of emails, we get a lot of phone calls, and I'm very reluctant to take an app project from somebody that I don't know. I get a lot of students walking into my office going, I've got a great idea for an app. My first response is, great, buy my book and start developing it. But that's not always the case that they can do that. I encourage them to do it themselves, but that's not always possible.
You say that, and it sounds kind of funny, but I have actually had people come to me and say, I want to do X, Y, Z, and I know what goes into that process. And in order to figure out if they're serious, I will tell them, okay, then here's the first thing you need to do. And I will go and give them homework. And if they never come back to me with those pieces, the conversations is not
They weren't serious. And there's a lot of, I would say 50% of the app proposals that I receive, they've got a great idea, and they want to give me the idea, and I do all the work. And then they'll split the profit. And that's a no-go right there. It's like, no, if I'm doing all the work, I'm not taking 50%. I've got plenty of my own projects that I want to work on, not to make a project because you had an idea. Ideas are free.
Because I had a great idea, Brian.
Contracting, what do they call that? There's contracting for profit or contract. There's a term for it where people will actually take on a project with they do the agreements up front that this is your role, this is your risk, this is your reward, sort of thing, and then they go in and everybody comes together to try to make the project happen, and then you're supposed to the big payoffs at the end. And people who do that, they generally are after the bigger ticket items, and there's lots of contracts up front and stuff like that. But yeah, somebody just comes in and says, hey, I have an idea and we'll split it. No.
Working for share is really a bad idea.
Yes.
So only do it if the project you're included in is very interesting for you and you really see it's very good. But for me, I usually interview clients to be adequate. Like if they really know what they're doing, I evaluate their idea if it's really worth doing it, if it's not going to sunk in all other applications or other stuff. But the main point for a client to be working on if he pays or not, basically. How much money is it?
Well, and you want the project to be successful, right? So, like you say, like Brian was talking about at the beginning, you need as many details as possible, because sometimes some people will say, "Well, give me a ballpark estimate." Well, I need I need lots of details in order to be able to get you a fairly accurate number.
Right.
And
And there's
accurate.
websites that have that.
Yeah.
There's pricing websites out there on how much these apps should cost to develop, and you can send them to one of those links, and then you undercut that website.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the other part of that, though, is like Ed was talking about, is that you've got to, you have to listen to what people are saying, and you have to know. I had a thought there. You have to know what you're getting into, right? So you ask as many questions as possible, because you're really interviewing the client. You need to know, like Sergey was saying, where can you work with this person? Is their idea any good? I mean, are they serious? So I got to ask lots of questions and make sure that you can work with the client. I know Ed's talked about this before. Make sure that your personalities match up to, and then also just think of it as the project's. There's a responsibility there. Once you make it and maintain it, it's not just something that just goes away. I mean, I don't know how you guys feel about it. If you just do the project and then never see the client again, but I usually have follow-up work, maintaining whatever it is.
Well, and that's something that you need to hang on to, is that follow-up work, because apps have to be updated. They have to be. There's going to be changes that need to be done, and if need be, you need to remind the client that if you want follow-up work.
And almost no client has a specific task to give you. It's almost every time something vague, and you have always to be a part of a designer. You're not just a programmer that just do what it was told to do. You're a developer. You develop with the client. You help out to design the application to go better. Yeah. So it's important.
Robert Kiyosaki wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and in the book he talks about listening to people's words, because a lot of times you can figure out where they're coming from, what their vantage point is, and you might be able to determine whether or not this is a project that you need to charge more or less for. You don't want to just figure up the hours and then multiply that by your rate and then figure out if that's what the cost of the project is. If a client is going to require a lot of hand-holding or a lot of, like Sergey was saying, a lot of education, you're going to have to fill them in on how things actually work versus how they think things work. Then that's going to require a whole extra level of effort on your part, and so you can figure that out a lot of times by listening to them in the initial conversation. So I know everybody here will cringe when somebody says, "Well, it's just fairly simple. I just want to do this one thing. It should be simple to do." And it's like, simple's a relative term.
If it's simple, why aren't you doing it?
Right. So yeah.
So get many such clients who go to me and say, "I want really simple applications, like $100. I will pay you. It's gonna take you like 30 minutes to make." And they give me ideas, and then we talk about it, and then we find out it's actually like a 2 weeks work job or something.
I'll give you $100 to do it.
Okay. Do you guys use contracts or anything with your clients? Do you have use something formal that you use?
Yes.
I'm using website Odesk for work, and it has automatic contracts that are guaranteed by Odesk itself. So he's like a mediator.
Odesk is actually fantastic for communicating, and I have several people that I work with on Odesk, and I love it.
But if you do use Odesk, there's a cost.
There is a cost, yeah, but it's facilitating in a transaction, and, yeah. And I have had some people who I will meet through some sort of third-party service like that, and then they want to work outside of that structure, and then if we've worked successfully on an initial project together, then I have no problem doing that. But it's a great way to kind of keep a barrier between you and the client if you feel comfortable with that.
I'd like to say something back on the vetting question. So first of all, I vet all my clients, whether I know them personally or not. And the reason I do that is not because I don't trust people. It's because I don't trust projects. I need to get a handle on the project before I can say yes. But one of the things that I do that was a little different from what you guys said is typically, first of all, I will always require some kind of documentation before I will say yes or no on a project. And you guys did say that in effect that more information up front about the project is good. But another thing I will do, especially if I'm working with somebody new, or maybe working with somebody new, is I will get this documentation from them after I've had a meeting, and I will choose either a small part or like maybe if it's a short project, the whole project. But what I'll do is a very short prototype of a segment of their project or the whole project, again, depending on how big their project is. And then I will show it to them. And the purpose of this, although it costs me time, can cost me up to about 2 hours of time, is if I can't make a prototype from what they told me, then they look at it and say, yep, that's what I was talking about. Then we're not communicating even from the get-go. And at that point, we can both go, well, maybe this won't work out. Maybe I should talk to somebody else.
I agree with that, and I've done the same thing. I don't use contracts per se, but I do on occasion when the project requires it. I will write things up so that I can mirror whatever the client said that they wanted, and that way they know that I understood it. And that usually takes me a couple hours to. I have a template and I put it all in there, but it still takes me a couple hours to kind of think it all up and reference my notes and then send it off to them. So it sounds like that's the same type of deal, except for you want to go for more of the technical end of it, make sure that you're able to accomplish or communicate with them with that.
Is knowing that I'm able to understand what they are trying to achieve and we're communicating. Because I've worked on enough contracts where we didn't communicate well and it was really frustrating that I just don't want to go down that road anymore.
All right. Okay. So next question here, and I think this is an important one. We probably will spend a few minutes on here. Is how do you track your time? How do you do your billing? And I think this has not only just a technical aspect of which software do you use, but also sort of like what do you bill for?
Right.
So what do you guys think?
I can start. So again, I'm using Odesk, and it has for time-based projects or for hourly rates. You use their software that tracks your time when you are active on your computer, and it's all automatic. You're working, you get paid for it at the end of the week. If it's a milestone-based project, client sets milestones like version 1, version 2, or part this, part that, and when I submit it, they are requested to approve it. If they approve it, the money are billed from them, from the account.
Sergey, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
How many typically, and don't answer if you don't want to, but typically how many overlapping contracts do you work on at a time? Are you a back-to-back contract kind of guy or overlapping?
It's better to have at least 2 contracts ongoing for me. My best scheme is to have one long-term project and one short time, or maybe one long-term and working on my own games.
The reason I asked is because you said something that I found interesting. First of all, I use a application, a web app called harvestapp.com as a timesheet, sort of like your Odesk. And it also has the ability, you just click a button and it tracks how long it was, and then you click it again, it's a timesheet. The one thing that is different for me, though, is, and this is actually something I put in the contract with clients, is some of my clients, if I've deemed them to be interrupt risk clients, somebody who may interrupt you at odd times when you're working on other things, I charge a minimum amount of time if they are going to be interrupting me a lot. Because if I have a client that interrupts when I'm doing other things, like tries to reach out to me, call me, IM me, stuff like that, and it breaks my train of thought, I just lost time. So in that case, I charge a minimum of, say, like 15 minutes duration.
I totally agree with that. Totally agree with that. And that what that also does is it trains the client, which there's a certain aspect of training clients. If they see on the bill that when they emailed you or called you or interrupted you or whatever that they got charged for that, then they're gonna think twice about doing it. It's going to need to be important. So I totally agree with that.
I don't have such problems. Part of that is because I'm living in another time zone, so when I'm working, they're sleeping. But if they do talk to me while I'm working, it's usually not that bad. So it's usually when they start talking, I switch token and stop coding, and then I just resume coding. It's not too difficult.
Yeah. So Ed, you need to start working at 2:00 in the morning.
Yeah, I'm also a little bit, I think, and I've noticed this from just talking to Sergey over the years now. It seems is that Sergey's a little more able to go in and out of work quickly, whereas I'm more of like I gotta work and put the blinders on.
I'm not saying that it's perfectly okay. It is definitely distracts you from your thought process, but it's not too bad.
Well, I tell you, I use FreshBooks, so I don't know if you guys have ever heard or used that at all, but it's really good. I mean, it's probably along the same lines as this Harvest thing that you're talking about, Ed. It does have a timer that you can start up, and it sits over in a little window and keeps track of your time, and then you can tag it to that time to a client and kind of put in notes for yourself what you were doing, and then at the end of the period, it makes it easy for me to go in and then generate an invoice and then send that to them, and it lets you either send them a paper invoice if they're that kind of client, or you can email them directly from the system, or you can download a PDF if you want to email them through your own email system. But I would say, based on kind of what we're talking about here, you definitely need to track your time. Even if you don't think you do, right? So some people might, in the beginning when they start out, they might say, well, this project is only going to take me a week. Track your time. Track your time, because 2 weeks into it, you're going to want to know, that you're going to want to be able to tell the client, hey, look, we thought it was only going to be a week, but it's actually taken 2 weeks, and I've actually spent this amount of hours. And if you keep notes and go back and look at what you've done, you can see where your time was spent, right? You can tell if your time was spent in meetings or if it was spent in coding or design or whatever. And you may think, well, I'll be able to keep track of that because I'm not an idiot. You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised that if you start tracking your time, even if it's non-project related time, right? Your own, like you were talking about before, your own projects, your own email, checking your emails, checking your instant messenger, doing whatever, you'd be surprised to find out how much time you spend on something.
Well, okay. I'm not surprised anymore because I track my time.
Yeah. Well, it's it's one of those things that I know I didn't. Yeah, I did not do early on, and
how I wasted so much time.
Yeah, and it it just comes back. It's all aggregate, and it comes back over time. So, okay, another question here, and I think we're getting close to the end of here, and we may have to push some of these questions out till next time. But here's an important one. When you bill, are your bills due on receipt of the invoice, net 15, net 30, or net 45? When do people have to pay you?
What does it mean?
When is the bill due? Like, if you send them an invoice, when are they expected to pay? Immediately or within a certain period of time? What's your policy?
Often.
Often. As frequently as possible.
Be specific now.
Yeah, I generally.
Go ahead.
Aaron. Go ahead, Brian.
I generally, if I'm working on a contract billing for hours, I prefer net 15 to keep it on the client's front burner. If I'm selling books to school districts or universities, I realize that larger organizations just take longer to do things, so I go net 30. So it depends on who I'm billing.
Yeah, exactly. And here's what I found, kind of along the same lines. It doesn't matter. Everything that I bill is due on receipt. When I send you the invoice, I want the money. That client has their own policies as to when they pay for things. Okay? Right. And if they don't pay you within that specified period of time, you may say, well, look, if you haven't paid me in 90 days, right, I'm not doing any more work for you, right? If you set, what are you going to do if they don't pay you in net 15? You're going to do nothing. All you're going to do is not want to work with them in the future. So what I generally
bad debt. Yeah.
it becomes bad debt if they don't pay it. So generally what I do is I just say everything's due on, when I send you an invoice, it's due, and then each client tends to have their own cycle that they pay. Most of them pay within the 30-day window. I've had a few that were bigger that actually had sort of the 45-day window. But at the end of it all, it's up to the client when they pay the invoice.
Do you see the benefit of doing like the half in, half out? I mean, I like to make sure the customer is actually going to be able to pay. So depending on the project, I'll say 50% down, 50% down, 50% on the completion, and that way they've got the skin in the game right away. It's not like I had this great idea and I hope you can make it and we make money.
Well, no, yeah. If anybody else has anything to throw in, I definitely have an opinion on that.
I can tell you how Odesk works. It's really great. It really saves a lot of headache. I don't care about the payment basically when it is because it's automatic. When I'm doing time job, hourly rate, the client is billed at the end of the week, and there is some short security period, like several days, and then the money get transferred. So it's usually only about a week before I get actual money. And if for some reason client does not pay this money to Odesk and to me, Odesk will pay it to me automatically because it's protected. And when I'm doing not time job but milestone based, on project based, I can see on Odesk if the money have been paid to Odesk, and the client will have to just push one button to release the funds.
Yeah, Sergey is definitely, when you're using Odesk, that's definitely a more fluid, financially more fluid model. There are costs associated with that, like we were talking about earlier. Odesk does take a portion of that. I found that when working with clients, getting the money is important. And there are times when I will take on an extra expense, like I will tell somebody I'll take a credit card if that will secure the funds right now, right? If I know they're a person who has sent me and we've sent me a check or something like that before, and it's not going to cost me anything, and I'll wait. That's fine. I'll do that. But to answer the question that was asked there, do you take money up front? Personally, yes, I do. I say it's 50% up front, and then it's 50% on delivery. And just like what was it's like Matthew was saying, it's to ensure that the person has skin in the game. To ensure that they're serious about the project, and so some people will be surprised by that. They'll be like, "Whoa, you want 50% of the project up front? Well, how do I know that you're not going to, you're good for it?" And I'm like, well, one, I'm good for it. Usually you want to have references. You want to work with people that you can trust. But two, you need to turn that around and say, look, how do I know that you are going to be good for it? And just it should be fair on both sides. So what that generally does is it makes sure that that person is serious. It makes sure that they have some skin in the game. It also makes sure that they pay attention, that they get you the resource files that you need. It makes sure it makes sure that everybody is serious in the conversation, and then it works out really well. And what I'll generally do is I will listen to the person's conversation. I'll get the details of the project. I'll give them an estimate, and I'll say, it's going to be within. I'll give them a range. I'll say it's going to be within this or this, right? And generally that range involves the top end. And then I'll give them an invoice for 50% of that. And what that does is it gives us a starting point for the cost of the project. And then I also tell them that I'm going to bill for actuals. So at the end of the project, when I invoice for the remaining half, then I can say, okay, well, you asked for these additional things, and
I'll tell you what, that little cunt, you're boring, Nigerian at all. So go and fuck yourself. Fucking call him a dirty, dank little fucking come from, you dirty, dragon-eating little fucking spastic. Right, okay, the dragon comment was probably...
I'm not sure that that was for us.
This was very random.
It was very random. I'm not sure that was for us.
That's an example of a client you shouldn't work with. Okay.
That's
well, there you go. There you go. So, where was I?
Okay, whose client was that?
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't recognize the voice.
I don't recognize the voice either. So yeah, okay. So 50% up front, and then bill for actuals. Because if the client, like Ed has talked about, if the client makes it to where they do additional emails, or they do additional work, or they do additional whatever, and you have to spend more time, then that you should be compensated for that time. So you bill at actuals at the end, and nobody has any surprises, and it all works out pretty well. Wow, we're getting some practice at ejecting people today.
That's right. We've never had this problem before.
No, this is good stuff.
About estimates. Estimates are pretty hard to define at the start, so you have to be as much vague about them as possible. Don't give, when you give a range, make sure the range is at least twice as long as, like, you have a range from 1 week to 2 weeks, or from 1 month to 2 months, or from half a year to a year. It must be like this.
Yeah, nobody's going to be upset if you come in under budget or under time, but they will be definitely upset if you come in over budget and over time.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
Can I comment?
Yeah, please do. Please do.
I'll keep it short. One, I do on receipt. Barry, I think you're coming through there.
Yeah, he's got a slow connection now.
Short contracts. Yes, I do exactly what you do, Charles. There, I do 50% up front and then 50% on completion. Long contracts, a lot more cautious. If I do an estimate at all, then I will typically do the 50% up front. But then after 1 month, I start billing by the hour, and I charge every 2 weeks.
Okay.
Then I'm done. That's my summary.
Yeah, and I think the takeaway from this, and what we've seen this whole conversation, right, is that there are some common elements. There's vetting the client. There's what to charge. There's how to track your time. There's definitely these common elements we all have to account for, but we also all have different ways of dealing with them. We all have different thresholds of risk. We all have different measurements of what success of the project is, or how we should be rewarded, or so go ahead and try to go ahead and set up what works best for your business. That's the end result. So okay, we're gonna have some more of these conversations as we go along. So hopefully we'll be able to cover some more of this. I definitely want to leave you guys with this thought, and that is seek out other contractors who are actively servicing clients, and brainstorm, mastermind, because that's where you're going to get the gold nuggets. Skip any books that are outdated. Like we were talking about at the top of the show. Not all those technical books out there are maintained like Brian's books are, especially consulting books. They can be a little general, and things move so quickly these days that I doubt there's a book out there that includes Slack or any of these fresh books or any of these other tools that you're going to use to run your business. So seek advice from others, and do the best you can. All right. So next time we're going to talk about game development. The next segment, the grid pattern part of our.
Yeah, I think we should do a short segment on that. But if everybody's willing, we might want to continue finishing off this discussion.
Okay. That's yeah. Well, let's just show up here next week and see how we feel.
In my opinion, this discussion is better than showing how to develop a game for now, because it's something different, something we haven't been talking about before.
Okay. Yeah. I'm all for it. I love this part of the conversation. So all right, well, let's do that. Let's agree then. We'll come back next time and we'll finish talking about contracting and stuff, and then we'll just see where we get from there. All right. Well, guys, thanks for being here. Thanks for joining us. You can find everything at facebook.com/CoronaGeek or youtube.com/CoronaGeek. Go back and watch all those previous Hangouts, and we'll be back here next Monday at 12 p.m. Pacific to talk all about mobile app development using Corona SDK. Until then, have a great week and happy coding.
Cool.